Hello and welcome to the 105. I'm Cooper Petagna. That's 24/7 Sports Director of Scouting, Andrew Ivins. And Drew, you thought it was just going to be a normal Wednesday morning. I got on Twitter at about 7:30, and the college football world was a-buzzing. Matthew Sluka, if you didn't know who he was yesterday, you sure do know his name this morning. UNLV, they're 3-0. He's the quarterback of that team. They're ranked inside the top 25. They haven't been 3-0 to start a season in over 40 years, Drew. Well, why is it important? Well, he enters his name in the transfer portal, or the intention of putting his name in the transfer portal, after UNLV did not meet the certain representations according to Matthew Sluka. He's a senior. He transferred from Holy Cross. He's playing in Brennan Marion's go-go offense. Drew, this story has been completely fluid. We've heard from Matthew Sluka's father. We've heard from UNLV's collective. It's all over the place right now. It's a lot of finger pointing, but the biggest thing is the takeaway is this just going to be something new in college football now that we have to deal with, because the reality is you got a team that was had their focus on the college football playoff and had a pretty good pathway to get there. Now all of a sudden their starting quarterback's not there, and I don't even know really what to make of it. You're just instant reaction to this whole fiasco that has taken place this morning.
A few things here, Cooper. Number one, 7:30 in the morning, man. I read this at 5:15 on the way to the gym. I was way ahead of you. Early bird gets the worm. I think this shakes up the college football playoff picture a little bit. I mean, UNLV, you said it, 3-0. Remember, the group of five is going to get a spot in the 12-team playoff, and it seems like UNLV was right there at the top of the list, along with Boise State. I think you can throw James Madison in there. I'm personally pulling for one of these service academies, Army or Navy. So there's some shakeup there. The other reaction, Cooper, Sluka's father said that they didn't, UNLV or the collective didn't handle his living arrangements. Hey, some casino can't step up and get this guy like a suite for a few months there in Las Vegas. That's another thought. And then really the big takeaway is, I think I'm kind of glad this is playing out in the public sphere on a Wednesday in the middle of everything, because I think the average college football fan does not realize this is going on behind the scenes around the country. Every school is dealing with this in terms of the negotiation process, right? You have these agents, you have these families that are trying to create some leverage and twist at the arms of these schools. And really, it speaks to the bigger issue where there are no guardrails in place when it comes from the NCAA with this NIL stuff. We don't know what these contracts look like. Every school is operating on something different. So like you said, it's a lot of finger pointing. It's a lot of he said, she said. I think most schools, there's only 2 or 3 people that really know what the deals, what the wording of those deals are. So I'm glad this is kind of playing out right here, because maybe it's going to lead to some more regulations, right? Coop, I mean, think about it. None of these agents are certified by anyone. It's not like the NFLPA. It's just anyone who wants to be an agent can represent anyone.
All right, so that to me is where there's a lot of misguided frustration right now. Do you point the finger at Barry Odom? Do you point the finger at UNLV, their collective? Do you point the finger at Matthew Sluka leaving his team before the 4th game of the season, and they're in playoff position as a group of 5 program? What about the agent, right? You just talked about the credibility and the legitimacy of the agents right now in the college sport and college football to talk about exclusively. This, from what we understand, was a verbal agreement. Nothing was ever in writing. If I'm Matthew Sluka, that is where my frustration is coming upon, where you thought you had a $100,000 deal that was going to materialize once you enrolled on campus. You're 3-0. That money's not there. It sounds like there's $3,000 paid. You talked about the relocation package never came. I think UNLV talked with Sluka, his representatives, and said, hey, we'll give you $3,000 a month for the next 4 months, but that's all you're going to get. I think what's interesting here, I try to put myself in the position of Matthew Sluka's father or somebody in that decision-making realm and say, all right, what would be best for Matthew Sluka? Here's Matthew Sluka, by the way. 40 games started, 44 games played. 3 of those games started at UNLV. He played 4 years over at Holy Cross at the FCS level. Through 3 games this season, 21-48, 43% completion rate, 318 yards, 6 touchdowns to 1 INT. He's also rushed the ball 39 times for 253 yards and a touchdown. Drew, I will say this. turning on, buzzing a little bit of the tape, the Kansas tape this morning, the Houston tape, a little bit of that one. The tape was better than what I saw from a statistical standpoint. So you can understand why UNLV feels really comfortable with a guy like Matthew Sluka. The biggest thing is if he's not getting paid, he's probably getting tampered with. There's probably a Power 4 team that has seen him during their advanced scouting, whether it's a Houston or scouting at Kansas, that says, you know what? They're going to pay this guy $12,000. We'll gladly pay him $150,000, $200,000. That money's out there, and with 1 year of eligibility left, that's tangible. They'll say, hey, I'll put that in ink. You'll have it when you get here. That's what Matthew Sluka is weighing right now. I think it's an unfortunate situation. I think the other thing that you said, UNLV could have stepped up at any time, made this right, paid $100K, kept this roster intact. And then it's a fortunate situation for everybody else, including your team, your staff, and now you have that continuity for the rest of the season. For it to get to this point, I think it's just a sad, sad reality. And I don't think it's going to be a one-off either.
Well, Coop, I wrote down 3 potential landing destinations for Sluka. Number 1, Michigan, right? Sluka can run the football with his legs, but I think he's a little bit better of a passer than Alex Orji. Also wrote down Vanderbilt post Diego Paiva, what he's been able to do there in Nashville. And then like Boston College, once they lose Thomas Castellanos, look, there is going to be a market for him. And that one word you brought up, tampering, I'll say this, Coop. I've been asked for, I think, 3 or 4 different phone numbers of kids that are currently playing college football, making plays this week. So yes, there are a lot of people kind of looking around at some of these stars and preparing to make some moves when that winter window transfer portal window opens up. Wow, that's a mouthful. Winter window for transfers, or I can't even get it through.
You've been up since 5 o'clock, so we'll excuse that. Wednesday, college football delivering. I mean, who knew that this was coming? And this is definitely going to be a story that will follow throughout the rest of the week. Probably going to linger on past that as well. We'll see what happens with Matthew Sluka. Guys, just a reminder, you are locked in to the 105. Same 2 guys with a new name. You can find us on Monday on the CBS Sports Network at 2 o'clock Eastern. You can also find us right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel every Wednesday at 1 o'clock Eastern. And wherever you find your podcast, guys, if you're listening over the airwaves, make sure to leave a review as well. We had a stellar debut on Monday. We appreciate you guys joining us. Like and subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. And if you're in the chat, you got a question, make sure to mix it up there. Say hello. We'd love to see you. We appreciate you guys hanging around. All right, Drew, here's an interesting topic for you. Wisconsin, you brought this up. I think you wrote about it in your talent tracker this week, which you can find on cbssports.com. Drew does a great future every week. Wisconsin, are they behind schedule? Luke Fickell, year 2. The Badgers are coming off a tough loss, 42-10 to Alabama at home in Madison. Tyler Van Dyke, the Miami transfer, he's out for the year. They got USC this weekend in the Coliseum out in LA. Interesting, Drew. Just can you take me through maybe how this kind of came together and why this was something on the top of your mind?
Coop, I'm a company man, and Wisconsin is going to be on the mothership Saturday, taking on USC, 3:30 CBS out in LA. And, that game's in the spotlight. Just thinking about the Badgers. Go back to the early signing period, Cooper. We raved about Wisconsin, the recruiting class, what Luke Fickell is doing. But I think when you look on the field, they do appear to be behind schedule. And Coop, I'm going to throw this at you. 2022 coaching carousel. There was 2 notable hires in the Big Ten, Matt Rule at Nebraska and Luke Fickell at Wisconsin. I say they were notable for people like us in the personnel world, the people that are watching the tape. We like both those guys because of what they had done at their previous stops when it came to evaluating player development. Matt Rule at Baylor and Temple, close to 24 NFL draft picks. Only one of those kids was ranked as a 4-star prospect coming out. When you look at Luke Fickell, what he did at Cincinnati, back-to-back New Year's 6 games, he too never really had a ton of star power. He found guys like Sauce Gardner, developed him. He found Desmond Ridder. That was his quarterback. Well, early on, a month into year 2 for both of these coaches, it seems like Matt Rule has his thing rocking and rolling there in Lincoln. And then you look towards Madison with Luke Fickell, and I think they're struggling to find an identity. They're 91st nationally in total offense. I know Tyler Van Dyke goes down with an injury, but you got Phil Longo, this air raid offensive coordinator. and they're not really passing it. They're trying to run the football. Then on defense, 41st nationally in total defense. And Wisconsin, to me, that's always been a unit where they limit opponents. Go back to the preseason polls in the Big Ten. Wisconsin didn't have a first team selection. It just feels like something isn't right now. And Luke Fickell said it after the loss to the Alabama. He said it to reporters, hey, we're looking for something to hang our hats on. And I think that's a good question. I think he's mulling over the same things we're talking about. Wisconsin, in their last 12 games against power conference opponents, Cooper, 5-7. They could go with consecutive losses to LSU in the bowl game, Alabama, then USC. Not what you think when you think Wisconsin football.
I'm a huge believer in Luke Fickell. You know, when that Notre Dame job came open, Marcus Freeman was there. He was the defensive coordinator. But if they looked outside of that, I thought Luke Fickell was going to be the choice. He ends up taking the job at Wisconsin. When he was at Cincinnati, Drew, he was 57-18 over 6 years. We always talk about that stat, that amazing stat in the 2022 NFL draft coming off a college football playoff appearance where they had 9 guys drafted. That was only behind LSU and Alabama. The thing that stands out to me is a quarterback play in Madison, right? Tyler Van Dyke is out. They acquire him via the transfer portal from Miami. Desmond Ridder was there from 2018 to 2021. He helped lead the Bearcats to a 44-7 record. That's stability under Mike Denbrock and that offense there. They did a tremendous job. They don't have that right now. They don't have that play caller. They thought Tyler Van Dyke was going to be the guy. Is that next guy already in the room? I don't know. I'm with you. The Phil Longo marriage seems a little bit wonky as well, but I trust them from a talent ID, from a talent evaluation standpoint. 23rd in the composite team rankings sitting right now, or last year, 27 right now as it stands today. So they've done a better job. I think this is a player development program. I think eventually they'll get it right, but they got to get it right at quarterback. And the other thing about that, Drew, I'll throw a little Petagna flag at you. Desmond Ridder, yours truly, right? He was under Zach Taylor, the offensive coordinator, Tommy Tuberville, when the boys were there going 4-8 in our last season. He was one of our guys. So they got to find that guy at quarterback, Drew. That's my biggest thing. I think they'll be okay. I think you got to give Luke Fickell time. Is that a fair critique?
It is. I just think the parallel between Rule has obviously struck gold with Dylan Raiola. I mean, that has made it much easier. But you look at Nebraska's defense, and it's a ramped up unit, right? They can pressure the quarterback. They can get into some of these battles in the Big Ten. I don't know about if you can say the same with Wisconsin. Was anyone expecting them to beat Alabama? No. But did you think they would have fourth quarter one-score leads over South Dakota in Western Michigan? It just feels like this thing it hasn't gotten off the ground just yet. And do I have the answer for Wisconsin? I think there's some tough sledding ahead with Van Dyke out, right? Braden Locke's going to step in at quarterback. He started 3 games last season for them. They still don't have an identity on offense. To me, the answer, Luke Fickell, you looking to hang your hat on something, hang it on all that young talent you have in the program. Cooper, you look at that 2024 recruiting class that finished 23rd nationally. 5 of the guys have already gotten snaps on the offensive or defensive side of the balls, but they're in more of reserve roles. I would be pushing those individuals into action. That's Dylan Johnson on the defensive line. That is Dylan Jones, the running back. You have Kevin Haywood, the offensive tackle, one of the biggest risers for us. I know Wisconsin has some veterans up front, but hey, you need to be thinking long term, because I think the more you get these guys involved on Saturdays, it could pay off at some point down the line. I also like Xavier Lucas, the cornerback they got out of Florida. That's a kid that Miami wanted. FSU is sniffing around. Huge win for Wisconsin. I think you need to rip the Band-Aid off and insert these guys into the lineup. It might not result in wins here in 2024, but it could in 2025. And Coop, you are right on that quarterback situation. Big kind of head scratcher there for me. Look at what they have committed in the 25 cycle. They got Braden Locke's younger brother. He's out for the year with an ACL injury. They got a kid committed in 2026. I kind of don't really see the vision there just yet. I think Wisconsin, we'll see what happens with Tyler Van Dyke. Does he return? But they could be a player, I think, for a veteran arm that comes from another school. And I think that would especially be the case if they were to change offensive coordinators there in Madison.
I think the biggest contrast between Wisconsin and Luke Fickell, or excuse me, Wisconsin and Nebraska, you brought up Matt Rule and Luke Fickell being hired and within the same timeline, is Nebraska's use of the transfer portal, what they've done with guys like Dante Dowdell at running back, Isaiah Nayer at receiver, Sierra Wright on defense, then you plug in the franchise quarterback. They've done a good job getting after some premium positions surrounding their young playmaker at the quarterback position with some guys that complement him very well. And that defense, when he got there, one of the best defenses in the country. So maybe Nebraska a little bit more of a head start, but I think Matt Rule has been really, really aggressive with both his high school approach from an NIL standpoint in the transfer portal as well. Feels like a little bit more of a slower build for Wisconsin right now. And Luke Fickell, I'd like to see a little bit more urgency this offseason. CBS game of the week, like Drew said. Drew, love the plug. USC, Wisconsin out there in LA. Drew, speaking of quarterbacks, Cam Ward, he's the talk of the town right now. Every time I get on social media, there's a new graphic. Well, Cam Ward's my number one quarterback. Well, Cam Ward, I like him for the Heisman. Well, if you've been watching the show for the last 5-6 weeks, we've been saying that for quite some time. We're banging that drum. Ain't too proud to say that. Drew, is there another Cam Ward out there? That begs a question. Let me just lay it out for you. Cam Ward right now, 4-0, Heisman favorite at Miami, played over 3,300 snaps already throughout his career. 2 years at Incarnate Word, 2 years at Washington State University, now with Miami, Drew. He's got all the momentum and got a rocket attached to his back right now. So it begs the question, I think, where all those teams are trying to figure it out. We're a third of the way through this season. Is there another Cam Ward out there, and are any names coming to mind?
Well, the short answer is going to be no. And what prompted this question, Cooper? I think we are trying to forecast to December, right? There's going to be a lot of schools, a lot of front offices. We can use that term front offices now when we're talking about these schools. It's not just the recruiting department. It's all the individuals that are pulling the strings and making the decisions and assembling the rosters. I think they're going to look at Miami and what Mario Cristobal has done, because Cam Ward has unlocked plenty for the Hurricanes. And what makes Cam Ward who he is? Cam Ward right now leads the country in touchdown passes. He is second in passing yardage. It has been a long, long time since Miami had a gunslinger like him. To me, Coop, when I watch it, when I saw him at Florida week 1, when you saw him this past Saturday against USF, it's just the field command and the confidence. It feels like he is toying with opponents throughout the game. There's never any sense of panic from him. Yes, he can make all the throws. Yes, he's a dynamic athlete, but I think that experience, the fact that he's 22 years old, that is what the X factor for him is. So to answer your question, is there another Cam Ward out there? I don't think so. I think it's going to be a while. Remember, Cam Ward, you said it, 3,000 career snaps. He's got a 5th season thanks to that global pandemic, thanks to the extra year from the NCAA. I think that window, the days of the kids playing 5-6 years, it's going to close here in the coming years. So I don't know. I went through the PFF. I went through all the advanced statistics. I found some names, but I just want to be clear. I do not think there's a Cam Ward, meaning a guy that can transfer up, step in, take a team, put them in the college football playoff conversation, and then get their name in consideration for the Heisman Trophy.
Not yet. And I think that's the other thing. You know, you have teams that you talk to and they'll call you and say, hey, have you seen anybody out there that you like? And it's like, we're all watching the same games. You know, Cam Ward was a guy ultimately at the end of the day that I think people became more infatuated with. Ohio State, Florida State, Miami, obviously all sniffing around with him. The thing about Cam Ward was he was one of the few guys out there that you thought was like a true amplifier for a contender, where you thought about Cam Ward, if you plugged him into Miami, you're like, all right, these guys are 2 games better because of Cam Ward. He kind of elevates their ceiling, that margin of error as well. Mario's done a tremendous job building both sides of the line of scrimmage and has surrounded Cam Ward with a lot of talent as well. But besides the point, Drew, before we get into the candidates, I just got to say, like, what the Heisman odds are that opportunity has passed, but the number 1 pick potentially in the NFL draft, you kind of like that ticket right now, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, I screenshot it and sent it to you this morning. I saw it over the weekend, and then it disappeared on the Hard Rock Sportsbook, which is legal here in the state of Florida. Cam Ward right now plus 1,000 to go number 1 overall. I think we saw him in his one of the first mock drafts to have him go that high. You've been pounding the table. I don't think there's a clear-cut favorite right now when it comes to these picks, but it has been fun to watch the NFL draft media fall more and more in love with Cam Ward with each performance. And he's got another big opportunity this weekend, Friday night standalone game against Virginia Tech.
The fact that there is not a consensus makes me think that he's the guy with the biggest opportunity. That's why I get excited about Cam Ward. You said the odds were at a plus 1,000. I put my lunch money on that. Lunch money of about a month on that would feel pretty good about Cam Ward. I think it's all right there in front of him. If he can take Miami to an ACC championship, a college football playoff appearance, upset somebody in the quarterfinals, you got to love the Cam Ward story. Would be the semifinals if they get the bye, right? So we'll see what happens there. Let's get into the candidates, because I think this is pretty interesting. I think a lot of teams are kind of doing this right now. They're trying to feel out like, all right, who's some potential guys? But Drew, interesting list of names. I'm going to name them out for you. You start wherever you want. I watched them all this morning, so I got a little bit of context. We got Bryan Lewis at Nevada. Okay, he started 28 games, played in 32, as a former transfer from Colorado. Keon Jenkins, did I say that right? Keon?
Yeah, it's Keon, but I think I was watching an FIU game, and I think they call him Key One. He goes by Lights Out. My understanding it is Keon Jenkins at FIU.
All right, Keon Lights Out Jenkins, dope name. 15 games started. Excited to get into that one. John Mateer, Washington State. Man, that's some fun tape. Other guys, Byron Brown, South Florida, Preston Stone, SMU, Darian Mensah, Tulane. We've talked about him on the show. Luka Doncic, we just talked about him. And then Austin Simmons at Ole Miss. That one's different from everybody else. We'll get into that later. But where do you want to start with this?
I think we just need to, again, point it out, right? You said it. There is personnel departments around the country that are probably asking themselves the same question right now. When you look at, all right, the tape, you look at who has played so far through the first 4 weeks of the college football season, it doesn't appear to be a Cam Ward out there, right? Meaning a guy that's at a non-powered program ready to step in. With that being said, the list we have assembled, what stands out is I think all these guys have tools, right? And some of them have experience. Some are more experienced than others. And again, with Cam Ward, him being in a ton of different situations, him having played so many games, I think that is what makes him who he is. The one that jumps out to me, Bryan Lewis, you said it at Nevada. They've had a sneaky good year here. Originally started off at Colorado. This is a kid from the Lone Star State, like Cam Ward. He can beat you with his legs, but he's also can do it as a passer. Now, they faced Minnesota and were shut out, but I watched the cut up on that game, Cooper, and I thought he made some big-time throws in a situation where there wasn't going to be a ton of success. I think the thing with Bryan Lewis, he's going to be close to 30 starts by season's end. He's going to have one more year of eligibility. So he's one to me that I kind of got my eye on. What about you? Who jumps out for you?
Bryan Lewis was the guy that, you watched the start against SMU. The Troy game was really the game where I thought he showed his best stuff, where you're like, okay, I can work with this. But I think when you're talking about the lens of like who can make a top 25 team that much better, I don't know if there's a guy in there, but I'll give my quick hitters on all of these guys. I think Lights Out Jenkins, streaky guy, left-hander, 15 games started. I think he needs to stick it out there at FIU. I think that's probably what's best for his development. Fun guy to watch. Liked his game against Central Michigan. Certainly going to be somebody that I'm going to continue to follow.
I think he's a year away. I think we could have this conversation next year, and he might be ready to go.
True sophomore.
He needs more time in the crock pot.
Agree. John Mateer, sophomore from Texas, Washington State. Wazoo, undefeated. They just pulled these guys out of thin air year after year. 4 games started, 16 games played, 54% completion rate, over 1,000 yards already on the season, 11 touchdowns, 4 INTs, 425 yards rushing, 5 touchdowns on the ground as well. Drew, he is fun. Just talk about a guy that likes to improvise, extend plays with his feet, creative playmaker as a passer. I think he's got to get a lot better there. That's where he needs to take a jump. But his ability outside of the pocket as a runner, in terms of what he did against Washington, what you saw against Texas Tech, Mateer's the guy. If you had the right system in the tools and the resources around him, that would be a guy that I would be watching very closely. The other thing I would say to him, hey, all else equal, if I'm John Mateer, just stay at Washington State. It is a perfect system for you and what you've done. You've beaten Washington, you've beaten Texas Tech, you got things going. You're only in your second year, right? I get there's going to be a financial component to this, but I really like the fit at Washington State. Drew, the other names I mentioned, Byron Brown, watched the game against Alabama. There's more context there. I need to watch more of them, but the game in Alabama, really liked what he did athletically in terms of the feet. I think he's still got a ways to go as a passer to be more consistent in terms of teams are really going to be tempted with him. Preston Stone, watch him against Nevada. Kevin Jennings, now the new starter there at SMU. Yeah, I think, you can find a top 25 caliber team similar to SMU that says, all right, right fit, guys coming off of injury, let them sit a year. We'll take them from here. Kind of a nice reclamation prospect. Mensah, I've talked about this kid. This kid is a gamer. I think there's a ceiling on this guy. But if you just needed a plug-and-play guy that was super poised and is going to get better and better, that would be Mensah. Sluka, we'll see. We talked about him already. The kid we want to talk about is Austin Simmons. And by no way we're saying Austin Simmons is going to transfer, but Austin Simmons, Drew, totally interesting story. He is the number 2 quarterback in Oxford behind Jackson Dart. And I think it's fair to say, as of now, his future is in Oxford under Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. But Drew, the lefty, baseball background, dual sport athlete, this kid, 14 snaps, nothing there statistically that makes you go, wow. But a guy that reclassified, I believe, by 2 years, correct me if I'm wrong, in high school. He looks good. He looks long. The arm talent is there, the ability to layer the football, change speeds, quick twitch in the pocket, better athlete than I thought. Maybe not a transfer target, but man, if I'm an Ole Miss fan, I'm like, okay, pretty pumped about this dude. And I think you were right. I think it was like a week or two ago. You're like, Coop, Austin Simmons, man. And I'm finally got around to that tape, and I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I don't know if Austin Simmons really falls into the Cam Ward category. I think you just kind of tucked him in here because you wanted to talk about Austin Simmons, which I'm completely fine with. We are team Austin Simmons. I love it, Cooper, because if you go into the write-up, the notes I have on him, I will never write this sentence again because it's a one-of-one type of sentence. I mean, double reclass southpaw that can absolutely rip the football. That is the one-word summary on Austin Simmons. You're right. We'll see what happens with him. He's the number 2 quarterback, a kid that we're going to regret not having a 4th star next to his name. There's not a ton of footage out there. He's only thrown a few passes in mop-up duty, but I wrote it in the talent tracker, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. Look, if Jackson Dart, something were to happen to him, I think Austin Simmons could step in and keep that offense humming. Yeah, I think if you're Ole Miss and in that collective, you better be making sure you are taking care of Austin Simmons, because I think other evaluators are going to take a look at what we have seen. They're going to go back to the high school tape, and there's going to be some people trying to pry him away from Lane Kiffin.
There you have it. Austin Simmons, we're fired up. A 105 favorite, new 105 favorite, coining that term. Excited about that. 247sports.com. I mentioned all the college football recruiting news. 247sports.com is the place to be. You can also find Drew's article on cbssports.com. The talent tracker comes out every week. 247sports.com. Wall-to-wall team coverage, recruiting rankings, transfer portal updates. Those portal updates, Drew, we already got a couple guys in there. Sluka, Jaden Mickey. Got our guy Jason Brooks from Oklahoma State. Your boy is more involved in the transfer portal rankings this year. I'm freaking fired up, dude. Fired up about the transfer portal rankings.
Yeah, you say that now. I'm going to ask you on what date is it open? Like the 10th?
It's cool when there's like one guy trickling in.
Okay, so when does the window open? When does it open?
First, I should know that. It's got to be what, first week of December?
Yeah, all right. I'm going to ask you on December 12th how the transfer portal's going.
Well, what's going to be funny about that is like, it's going to be December 12th, and you and I are going to be in Mobile together at Alabama and Mississippi. All these guys are going to be jumping into the portal, and we're going to be trying to figure out how to sort it out. So, yes, that is going to be fun. All right, we got big matchup this week. Alabama hosting Georgia. Kalen DeBoer versus Kirby Smart. Whoo, Drew, I am fired up about this one. Where's the matchup? That's the name of the segment. Like that as well. We just got some fire segments coming out. Drew, I wrote down a couple. Didn't see your notes on the rundown, so I'm pretty interested to see where you're going to go here. What's standing out to you, bro?
Tate Ratledge, he's out, right? Got the tightrope surgery, which people have some opinions on that you talk to in the world of football. He's not going to play on Saturday. I think he's not done for the season, but I think that is a notable loss for Georgia, which struggled once he left the game there. The last time we saw the Bulldogs against Kentucky, lined up across from him, I would call it a deep rotation for the Crimson Tide. You look at what they did against Wisconsin. They rolled a ton of bodies through there up front. The name I have circled, though, LT Overton, former five-star recruit. He reclassifies, plays at Texas A&M, never really finds his footing, transfers to Alabama, leads the team, Cooper, with 13 pressures this season. I don't know if we're going to get Micah Morris, who's expected to fill in for Tate Ratledge across from LT Overton, but I do think there is a chink in Georgia's armor. There's a chink in that Great Wall of Athens right now. So that's where it starts for me. That's one of the matchups I'm watching. What about you?
What's funny about Alabama and Kane Womack is, it feels like, all right, it gives us the newborn life of a guy like LT Overton, and yet the potential of a guy like Keon Keeley or Jaheim Otis. You and I were talking about it before the show. We're still trying to figure out where in the hell is Keon Keeley. Jaheim Otis, he only play 13 snaps last week? It's a different scheme. Guys are adjusting. Obviously, he's going to have different positions that he's going to rely on. I'm glad that LT Overton is getting his feet back under him. But those other guys, man, Jaheim Otis, you talk about a potential needle mover if he ever saw the light of day on the transfer portal market. My goodness, a lot of people looking for big bodies like that. Drew, what stuck out to me, the right side of the offensive line for Alabama, is it going to be Elijah Pritchett? Is it going to be Welcome Formby? It was Pritchett last week. We saw that side really, really struggle against South Florida. That's been a little bit of an Achilles heel for them. Can they protect Jalen Milroe? And you're going up against guys like Jalen Walker. That's going to be really, really tough. Jalen Walker has been a guy that was a five-star for us. He's been playing with his hair on fire. You hear the NFL draft community right now talking about him as a potential first-round pick, working his way in that conversation. That's going to be interesting. The other one is, who covers Ryan Williams? Is it going to be Dalen Everett? Is it going to be Julian Humphrey? Which of those guys? Or is he going to get some Malachi Starks treatment, which is a guy that's probably going to be a top 20 draft pick as well? Drew, he's averaging 28.5 yards per catch. Kirby Smart, Glenn Schumann, the best thing they do, they take away what you do best, and that's going to be Jalen Milroe's legs, and that's going to be the vertical threat with a guy like Ryan Williams. So I'm super fascinated to kind of see this one play out.
I think, and I'm forecasting here, I think it's going to be Malachi Starks on Mr. Ryan Williams. And a name you didn't mention, KJ Bolden, the former five-star true freshman for the Bulldogs. Hey, late in that Kentucky game, Wildcats took a deep shot, right? It was Malachi Starks running stride for stride. Who was it against? I think it Barian Browning. Yeah, I don't know who it was, but Starks was the one in coverage. And guess who was over the top that made sure there wasn't a completion? It was KJ Bolden. So I think that's a fascinating one as well, Cooper. I mean, you wrote down a lot of good ones. This one's very niche, but when Georgia's in the red zone, how about Colby Young, the Miami transfer wide receiver? I mean, that guy bats 1,000 in 50-50 jump ball situations. Crimson Tide, very young in the secondary, especially at that cornerback position. Can Xavier Brown, another true freshman, match up with a guy like Colby Young if he's going to be in a rebound-like situation there? Or are they going to have to utilize Zay Mincy? You also got Keon Sabb, Damani Jackson. Those are bigger individuals. Yes, not a all-game type of matchup, but keep an eye on if Georgia gets down inside the 10, inside the 5. Colby Young was brought in for a specific reason, and it's to score touchdowns when they're down there, to throw it up to him. I want to see how Alabama answers there.
He seems like a perfect fit for Georgia and what they want to do under Mike Bobo. Drew, the last two, I talked about Jalen Milroe. He's already got 6 touchdowns rushing on the year. I think Georgia has the best team speed pound for pound in the country. Raylan Wilson, CJ Allen, they get the best backers in the country every single year under Glenn Schumann. And this is a big reason why they can defend both schemes, whether you're having a quarterback that's going to spread you out, whether he's going to pick you apart, or whether he's going to run. They have the guys to shut them down. I look forward to both Raylan Wilson, CJ Allen having a big game. And outside of that, where are the Georgia tight ends? Where are they? Drew, we talk about this unit being one of the best units under Todd Hartley. They have 7 combined receptions. And we're talking about a guy and a former all Pac-12 player in Ben Urasic. You got Oscar Delp, who there was a lot of hype about coming into the season. Lawson Lucky, a top 247 tight end. These are good players. And by all means, athletic players that can create separation down the field, do some things. Listen, I know Brock Bowers is an all-generation type of tight end, but these guys by a committee, the 3 of them, you throw in Jaden Riddell, they should be able to have more production than what they have so far in this season. That makes me a little bit nervous. It puts a lot on Carson Beck's shoulders. It puts a lot on the running game. Outside of that, receivers are really kind of some window dressing in Georgia's offense. They got to get these dudes going, Drew, or, that could be the difference in one of these games.
Coop, let's play Sunday headlines here. I'm putting you on the spot. Blank will be the true freshman everyone is raving about following the game on Saturday night. You got a no shortage of options. Nate Frazier, Ryan Williams, Caleb Odom, Zabian Brown, KJ Bolden. I'm probably missing some guys here. I think what's unique about this matchup is the young flavor of talent that will be on display. So who's going to shine brightest?
I'm going to say Bolden because he's done that through 3 weeks of the season already. I think he's the most ready to play out of all those guys that you mentioned, and that is a bonkers list of freshmen that are going to play in this game in a top 5 matchup. But KJ Bolden, just the versatility of what he can do playing close to the line of scrimmage. I think he can play the nickel. He can play the deep hash. That dude is well beyond his years, and to play safety at the University of Georgia, there is so much that is put on the shoulders of those guys and what they do. That is the staple of their defense. You're playing for guys like T-Rob and Will Muschamp and Kirby Smart. You got to have it going, not only physically, but between the ears as well. I like KJ Bolden, dynamic passing attack that Georgia's going to be going up against, but I think he's going to have a big day. I think Georgia's going to get this one done. But it's going to be close, man. I mean, every time I feel like these big games, I doubt Kalen DeBoer, and he just doesn't lose. So I'm interested to kind of see him in this silo of the SEC and how it turns out.
Hey, one more true freshman, Jalen Mbakwe, now returning punts for the Crimson Tide. I don't know. To me, when I look at this matchup, feels like a special teams play can kind of swing the momentum and be the difference. Very kind of tight margins across the board. So my Sunday headline, now this is a long shot, like Jalen Mbakwe, some type of field flipping punt return might be the difference.
Mbakwe is a dog. Another guy that we were like, all right, is he going to be a corner? Is he going to be a receiver? He played mostly offense during high school. Drew, where he really kind of shined the brightest was always as a returner, in my opinion. And I think he'll get there as a defensive back eventually, but the dude is pretty special with the ball in his hand. So I'm not doubting that at all. It could come down to a big special teams play. We'll see. The best athletes in the country will be on that field in Tuscaloosa on Saturday, fired up for that game. All right, Drew, we got a couple more blocks here to round out the show. Let's talk some quarterbacks, right? Because you and I were talking about this before CBS Game of the Week last week, Michigan, USC. Alex Orji, Michigan. Is he the answer? Is 7 of 12 or 13 for 32 yards, 13 rushing attempts and 43 yards? Is that the answer for Michigan going forward? I have my answer. I don't know. I'll throw it to you. What do you think?
I'm going to go no. Averaging 2.6 yards per attempt. He's completed one pass that has traveled further than the line of scrimmage this season. Look, Sharon Moore, the game plan the Wolverines had against USC. I mean, that is a massive, massive, massive win for Michigan, right? It was incredible to watch. That was an instant classic type of game, Coop. I don't know if you got those vibes watching on Saturday, but just the back and forth, USC fighting back. I mean, the stars came out, Kenneth Grant making plays, Will Johnson making plays, the wide receivers on the other side of the ball for USC. That was just fun to watch. And it had me thinking, okay, I can get on board with the reclassification. If we get these type of matchups on a week-to-week basis, I'm all in there. With Alex Orji, my concern for Michigan is I think USC didn't know what to expect. And other teams are going to be better suited to stop that style of offense, which is essentially like a single wing with that quarterback. A lot of quarterback runs, up the middle between the tackles with the running backs. That is what Michigan wants to do. But you look at their schedule. One school that stands out to me, aside from Ohio State and Oregon, Illinois' defensive line. I think they're a little bit better equipped than what USC has up front. So I have some long-term concerns about Alex Orji, the quarterback, and the statistical data would back that up.
It was a nice win over USC, and quite honestly, I think you and I favored USC in that game, and they had their opportunities. I think what you said about USC not knowing what to expect, I think if you were to read up on Alex Orji, not just read up, but do a deep dive into the tape that was available, you would know that he is a very one-dimensional player as a quarterback. This is not a guy right now that can beat you with his arms. He's not even dangerous there. So to be able to load the box, obviously you talked about that single wing. He can certainly get to the edges and is definitely a dynamic athlete, but I mean, just looking at it going forward, I just kind of think this is a team that's one-dimensional with a competent passing offense. We're talking about these guys being back in the college football playoff, and instead, I kind of think it was a gutsy win. They deserve a lot of credit. But if I was a betting man, I kind of see this team as a potential 3 or 4 loss team in the Big Ten. And it's going to be pretty interesting to see how it plays out because, like you said, I think the book's out, and I think you're going to see a lot of teams adjust to that.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds easy in theory for USC to be like, okay, we're gonna stack the box, but they didn't know what Alex Orji was going to do, and it took them 2 quarters, right? Go to that third quarter, USC kind of figured it out. I just think other defensive coordinators are going to have that tape, and they're going to know how to defend Alex Orji, unless we see something different here, and maybe we can. But man, he threw that one pass down the sidelines, and I was like, oof, it didn't look. It was a spiral. It just wasn't accurate.
Yeah, game ball goes to Khalil Mullings, that rushing attack and that offensive line, man. They proved it in a big way. Credit to them. All right, let's talk Oklahoma, Auburn. Auburn hosts Oklahoma this weekend. Both the focal points of a quarterback position that both programs are trying to get right. Jackson Arnold out at Oklahoma. Michael Hawkins in. Peyton Thorne out. Hank Brown in. Don't know what they're doing this week. Drew, let's start with Auburn. Do you think their quarterback of 2025 is in their room right now?
No, because we would have seen him already.
We'd be seeing him in 2024.
Yeah. Hey, Walker White, the 105 is a big fan of Walker White, talking about the true freshman quarterback for the Tigers, top 247 recruit. We had him at the All-American Bowl there in San Antonio, got better and better as the week went on. He's still, to me, a longer burn, and it's kind of notable that he hasn't been on the field just yet. Coop, I do have an idea, though, for Auburn. You remember back in 2013 when Nick Marshall, former defensive back, won a 4-man quarterback battle, kind of did some RPO stuff, a lot of running, and he got Auburn to the BCS national title game there in 2014. I was looking at Auburn's roster, right, going up and down. I'm like, all right, who also played some QB in high school? Found the guy. Keldrick Falk. Remember his senior season? Wildcat quarterback, had a few rushing touchdowns. When are we going to see that look? No, I'm just kidding. I've major concerns about Auburn. I think if me and you had to make a list right now of teams that are going to be in the transfer portal, looking for a Cam Ward, looking for someone that can come in and provide some stability at the position, Auburn is at the top of the board.
Begs the other question. What do you think about Jackson Arnold? Auburn at Auburn under Hugh Freeze. Bud Elliott brought it up of the cover 3. I don't know, man. It's been a mixed bag. 5 starts, 9 turnovers for Jackson Arnold. You can talk about Oklahoma a little bit. Let's talk about him. 101st in rushing, 4 new starters on the offensive line, 3 of which are transfers. A lot of inexperience. Nick Anderson, the number 1 target there, has been out most of the year. Got dinged up against Tennessee when he came back. Seth Littrell, is he the answer as offensive coordinator? So, yeah, Jackson Arnold hadn't played well, but the situation Jackson Arnold stepping into, and the same one that Michael Hawkins is getting ready to step into, those aren't great situations for a young quarterback. So I don't know. Would you have any confidence of Jackson Arnold going to Auburn and saying, "Hey, here's Cam Coleman, here's Perry Thompson, here's Malcolm Simmons, and the rest of their crew. Here's a better situation for you."
Well, I think you brought this up. Was it on Monday's show? Like Auburn, are those receivers going to look to go somewhere else? Like that would be my concern if I was on the Plains right now. Cam Coleman, we've seen the flashes from him. Is he looking around, or not even only him, but the people inside his camp? Hey, who's going to get you the football? On Jackson Arnold, man, you said it, Coop. It was not the right situation for him. And I thought in The Athletic, there was a story I read last night or this morning. I do not know who wrote it, but they brought up the fact, looking at the quarterback situations at Kansas State and Oklahoma. Remember, Dylan Gabriel, not pushed out the door, but I don't think they really fought for him to stay because they were ready to anoint Jackson Arnold at Kansas State. Will Howard leaves because Avery Johnson's kind of the new toy there. Both those programs lost over the weekend, and both of the new quarterbacks struggle. Avery Johnson on the road at BYU, Jackson Arnold at home against Tennessee. It was just an interesting kind of parallel. You know, to me, yanking Jackson Arnold, I get it. Your defense looked very good against Tennessee. They were giving you a performance that was good enough to win the game. But inserting Michael Hawkins, there's going to be a ripple effect from that. Who knows what Jackson Arnold's going to do? Is he going to stay in Oklahoma? Is he happy that he got pulled out of the game? In his eyes, it's like, hey, who's blocking for me? Who do you want me to throw to? And Michael Hawkins comes in. Now he's named the starter. I mean, Jackson Arnold, someone that you've invested so much time, not only in recruiting, but valuable practice reps. I mean, he could be walking out the door. And what does that leave you with? Yeah, Michael Hawkins, he provided a spark. It's much easier to come in from the bullpen, right, and provide some instant success. You see that all the time on Sundays, right? These backup quarterbacks step in, they complete a ton of passes. All right, now you're going to start the next week. Defenses are ready for them. They know your tells and where you're going to put the football, and they have bad games. So, Coop, I wrote down here, I would wager Casey Thompson is going to start a game for Oklahoma at some point this season. He's the number 3 quarterback for Oklahoma. I had no idea he was there. Last I saw from him, he was at FAU getting hurt against Clemson. I think Casey Thompson will play at some point for the Sooners.
Dude's been in college football for like 15 years. I'm glad you brought him up. Didn't even know he was over there at Oklahoma. But yeah, the Michael Hawkins thing, like, you know, what happens if Michael Hawkins, and I'm just talking about small sample size, but, you know, we go to this Saturday and Auburn pulls out a win. If you're Oklahoma, you're sitting there just like, you know, you're putting a lot on Michael Hawkins, who I think coming into the season, I don't think anybody had long-term expectations that this guy was going to be the guy. Obviously, they're excited about him, his ability to create, especially with the issues that they're having up front. I don't know, Drew. It's going to be a little bit of a dicey situation. It's a dicey situation already for Auburn, but Oklahoma, like, this doesn't work out over the next couple of weeks. I think they're kind of in a pretty difficult spot with no immediate answer in front of them. Let's talk about a couple other guys, young quarterbacks that we want to talk about. Say some praise for Michael Van Buren, the new starting quarterback at Mississippi State. Your first 2 starts at Texas, at Georgia, then you got Texas A&M at home. Blake Shapen out for the season. Michael Van Buren, we got to see him at the Under Armour game. Drew, you talk about killing confidence of a young quarterback, and I get this one is circumstantial, but my goodness, the way Mississippi State has looked, and now you got to go on the road to Austin, to Athens. It's pretty tough.
I'll say this, though. Michael Van Buren, he was at St. Francis Academy his senior season. I think they played the toughest high school football schedule in high school football history. I mean, they traveled all around the country. They played the best of the best teams, and he got pummeled on a week-to-week basis. So Michael Van Buren has been in this situation before. And I thought what stood out about him during the evaluation process, Cooper, is that last exposure at the Under Armour All-American game. Remember, he was lights out in the actual game. I think he ended up being the MVP. Not an ideal situation for Mississippi State. Like you said, Chris Parson was there. They kind of thrust him into action last season. I don't think he was ready, kind of killed some confidence there. You hope the same thing doesn't happen for Michael Van Buren. I would not expect much from him, though, in these next 2 starts.
All right, next two, Damon Williams, Washington, NC State, CJ Bailey. I'm talking to my financial advisor on the side. I'm saying, hey, get that CJ Bailey stock ready. We want to purchase some of that. I think everybody's going to be not down on CJ Bailey, but obviously NC State, they see that score, lopsided loss against Clemson. Dude, I liked what I saw from CJ Bailey. I'm kind of ready to get behind him.
Yeah, what is your takeaway? I had someone text me as that game was playing out on Saturday, and they said CJ Bailey's going to be a future star. I kind of had the same reaction. I was watching it with some people that were kind of dogging him. Maybe it's not the trained eye, but man, I thought CJ Bailey had his moments. Like if you're NC State, this is something that you can kind of rally around. It ain't going to get more difficult than that. First career start at Clemson going up against that defensive front.
Looked a lot better than what we've seen from Grayson McCall, who was injured, and obviously that's who CJ Bailey is filling in for. But like, if you're Dave Doran right now, what are you 2-2? Expectations obviously coming into the season were really high. I think a lot of people thought that they would be a potential college football playoff team. They have a lot of talent there. I think with CJ Bailey, it gives you something that this guy has shown that he can play against one of the better defenses in the country. I'd take my lumps already, and that's one of those things where it's easier said than done. You got to go who gives you the best chance to win now. I get that. But managing expectations for what they were in the beginning of the season now with a guy that you feel like, all right, we got a real chance to develop. You don't get those opportunities a lot. I think it's a unique opportunity for NC State to get behind a young freshman quarterback that they're convicted in, that they feel that can be their signal caller of the future. I like CJ Bailey. We're buying stock. The other guy, Drew, real quick, Damon Williams, been talking about him for quite some time. What's the deal on him? Has he played a little this season? What's the feel?
Well, Washington, Friday night, facing Rutgers. I'm sure Lance Glenn, our former producer, will be in Piscataway. I don't even know if the game's in Piscataway or Seattle, but it's a Big Ten game. Damon Williams. All right, if you play like Dynasty, college football fantasy, or you're in it, get this guy on the roster. Talked with someone inside the building. Damon Williams, they've been working him in more and more, using his legs. They've also let him throw a little bit. I think as the season progresses, Damon Williams is going to get more and more of an opportunity to play. I don't think anyone's talking about it right now in college football, and for good reason, right? Jed Fish, kind of a rebuild there, but this is the future of the program. Damon Williams, just wait for him to get his opportunity.
I mean, did we not talk about this in the preseason, right? If there is one freshman quarterback that you were looking at that might be able to play once they get in that Big Ten schedule, that'd be Damon Williams. We're fired up. I mean, the similarities, at least from a stature standpoint, playmaking standpoint, I think Noah Fifita, obviously the success that Jed Fish and his staff had in Arizona with Fifita, I think you see a lot of that in Damon Williams. And I think they're in a good position, right? Expectations are a little bit tempered in year one. Massive roster turnover. Will Rogers has played well enough, but you get to get this guy some reps built for the future as well. Steve Belichick, man, you seen him looking like a straight up psycho on the sidelines? That fires me up. Love the fact that he's up there in Montlake doing his thing. Guys, just a reminder, you are locked into the 105. You can find us every Monday and Wednesday. Monday on the CBS Sports Network, 2 o'clock Eastern, and Wednesday on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel at 1 o'clock Eastern. Make sure to like and subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Tell a friend. 105, the best roster management show in all of college football, right here at 24/7 Sports. All right, Drew, we're going to try to get out before the bottom of the hour. Transaction Wire, high school football recruiting. This is what we do. It's been a while since we've talked a little bit about it, but Isaiah Campbell, the big man, Clemson defensive line, that's what they do. He's back on the market. He decommitted, and I have to think you only decommit from Clemson unless you want to take an official visit somewhere else. That's the way it goes. North Carolina's in there. Tennessee's in there. Can't imagine Isaiah Campbell's fired up about giving up 70 points to JMU, but what do you think here?
I'm hearing Miami's also sniffing around.
Oh, Miami.
Yeah, I've heard that. I know Gabby Urrutia at Inside the U has reported the same. This is a big deal. All right, it happened, I think, in the middle of Saturday in the college football slate. Look, there's not a lot of big-bodied defensive linemen out there like this in the country. I've had schools continue to ask me, all right, like, hey, have you seen any defensive linemen? And Cooper, what I kept telling them, well, hey, I think the two guys headed to Clemson are really, really good. That would be Amari Adams and Isaiah Campbell. Isaiah Campbell opens it up. I think everyone is going to pivot to this kid. I write multiple frontline defender, well-rounded game, has undergone a major physical transformation, can win with both speed and power in 5 games this season, Cooper. 57 tackles, 15 of them for a loss, 34 quarterback hurries, 9 sacks. I got a late first-round grade on Isaiah Campbell. We're going to get him in the All-American Bowl. Fingers crossed. Certainly a name to know. I know everyone thinks, hey, recruiting news is dead. Remember, signing day 2 months away. Isaiah Campbell is a name you're going to continue to hear over the next few weeks.
That'd be a hell of a get for Miami. I don't feel like anybody's been talking about Isaiah Campbell. We kind of had him inside the top 50, and he's kind of just kept a low profile. Be interesting one, Drew, because I like that kid. I think he's got major upside. Colorado, are the Buffs back recruiting? Are they back to a high school recruiting machine? We got Antonio Branch Jr. flipping from Penn State, top 40 safety in the country. They're trending for Byron Baldwin, who's committed to Indiana. They also hosted Carday Smith, number 26 offensive tackle, who's committed to USC. Drew, what quick one-liner on what you've seen here from Colorado?
Well, Byron Baldwin, me and Hudson Standish on the scouting team at 24/7 Sports, we've long been fans of him. And I think Byron Baldwin's also picked up an offer from the Nittany Lions. He is an absolute steal for Indiana. They're trying to fight to hold on to him. Antonio Branch, single high safety, typical South Florida defensive back. Coop, I think Colorado has a huge opportunity this weekend. They travel to UCF, and I don't know if Prime's going to be there in 2025 and beyond, but the Knights, Gus Malzahn, they are loading up the recruiting section with Colorado in town. And you think about the Buffs, right? Some of their star players, Jimmy Horn, LeJonte Wester, both kids from the Sunshine State. I think if Colorado goes out and puts on a show at UCF's expense, that would, allow Colorado to have some momentum in one of the most fertile recruiting grounds in the entire country. Again, I don't know if Prime's going to be there, but I do think a sneaky storyline this weekend is that Colorado UCF game, because if Colorado can win again, I think that would do wonders for them, not only towards making a bowl game, but the direction of that program. It would be a statement in Big 12 play.
I like that. Do you know something we don't know about Prime? He signed a 2-year contract. What's going on?
I mean, we talked about it a few weeks ago on the 105 before it was rebranded. Hey, major roster reconstruction coming there in Boulder if Prime, or it doesn't even matter, whoever is going to be there in 2025. A lot of seniors on Colorado's too deep.
All right, fastest 2 minutes here, Drew. Recent commitments: Bryan Lewis, running back to Florida State; Ladarian Clarity to Ole Miss, safety. You might know this name, Dayton Raiola, the brother of Dylan Raiola, number 53 quarterback in 2026. Well, he's going to Nebraska as well. Quick thoughts here.
Let's talk about Dayton Raiola, who kind of looks like Jackson Mahomes. I don't know if you've seen that photo floating around.
I don't know if that's a good thing.
Well, I don't know. It's just I just laugh when that recruiting news plays out on social media. Have not seen this kid throw in person, Cooper, but he's got Buford off to a 3-1 record, completing 57.8% of his passes, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. 2 things. If I'm Nebraska, I'm doing whatever it takes to keep Dylan Raiola and the Raiola family happy. If you have to take a commitment from his brother, you do it. With that being said, the second thing I got here, Buford has 2 starting quarterbacks at the Power 4 level right now. Obviously, Raiola at Nebraska, but Ashton Daniels at Stanford, who is also off to a hot start. The school produces arms, so I have no issues with this take. I can see it for Nebraska, and I also think TJ Lateef, their 2025 quarterback, having a really good senior season here.
All right, Alabama, Georgia visitor list, absolutely insane. You got Justice Terry, Derek Smith, Ivan Taylor committed to Michigan, Andrew Olesh, another Michigan commit, Malachi Toney, Tim Merritt, Jaden Breaker. Is that right? Did I say that right?
Jaden Breaker, man.
Okay. So right now, Alabama ranks number 2. Drew, obviously, they still are being aggressive here. I would say the most likely out of this group, Ivan Taylor. What do you think about that?
Yeah, Elijah Haven, our number 1 ranked prospect in the 2027 cycle. He's also going to be in Bryant-Denny, according to our buddy Tom Loy. I think he was the first to report that. Takeaway here, Cooper. We doubted Kalen DeBoer, the recruiter, the first few months he was on the job there at Alabama. I look at this visitors list. This feels like a Nick Saban visitors list. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of interns like you were many moons ago there at Alabama, whipping the golf carts around. It is going to be a who's who in Tuscaloosa this weekend.
Love the golf cart days, man. Fun times. I remember just riding the golf cart with Mario with a box of pizza. Great time. Brings me back. Guys, we appreciate you joining us as always. The 105, like I said, you can find us on the airwaves, wherever you find your podcast. You can also find us Monday, Wednesday, CBS Sports Network, 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. I'm trying to hammer that home. We appreciate you joining us. We hope to see you next week. For Andrew Ivins, I'm Cooper Petagna. Have a great rest of your week and week 5 of college football. Let's go.